Welcome to a deep dive. Today we're getting right into the heart of it, navigating the super tight streets of Monte Carlo.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been digging through all the reports, the live updates, everything, covering Friday's free practice sessions for the Monaco Grand Prix. That's May 23rd, 2025.
So FP1 and FP2. And our goal here really is to distill everything down. We want to pull out the most important takeaways.
Exactly. Results, incidents, any surprises. What actually happened on track today, and maybe more importantly, what it suggests for the rest of the weekend at this, well, unique place.
Okay, let's jump straight into free practice one then. The initial headlines, pretty much dominated by Charles Leclerc.
Yep, Ferrari right at the top. Classic Monaco form starting to show, maybe.
Followed by Max Verstappen in the Red Bull. He was P2. And Lando Norris put the McLaren in P3.
And the Spanish driver, well, Carlos Sainz was P7 in the other Ferrari. Fernando Alonso closed out the top 10 for Aston Martin, P10 in FP1.
Decent starts, but, FP1 is often just about finding your feet here.
Building that confidence, feeling out the limits.
Speaking of limits, though, this is where FP1 got, well, really interesting pretty fast. We had drama almost straight away.
Oh, yeah, the incident between Leclerc and Lance Stroll down at Lowe's corner, right?
Exactly. Caught everyone a bit by surprise, I think.
It looked like Stroll sort of moved across just as Leclerc was powering through on a fast lap, definite contact.
Yeah, and it wasn't minor. Enough to bring out the red flag immediately, which you never want in Monaco, obviously.
No, track time is everything. But the bigger issue was the damage to Stroll's Aston. Reports mentioned gearbox, rear suspension. Pretty major stuff.
It ended his session right there.
Well,
and it wasn't just Friday, was it? He got a grid penalty for Sunday.
That's right, a grid drop and a super license point too. Leclerc damaged his front wing as well, but crucially, Ferrari got it changed quick smart and he was back out.
Still, not ideal for either of them.
Elsewhere in FP1, Lewis Hamilton seemed a bit off the pace initially.
Yeah, a few early errors noted, and he finished up about 7/10, I think, behind Leclerc, which is quite a gap.
And Sainz had a moment too, didn't he? He did, yeah. Saint Devote, locked up, went straight on, but managed to avoid the barriers, thankfully. Got it back on track.
And Max Verstappen was already on the radio about something weird.
Tear-offs, apparently. Said something was obstructing his view, which, around Monaco, is the last thing you need.
Definitely not. One other thing that stood out, maybe unexpectedly, was Williams.
Right. Alex Albon, P4, George Russell, P6. That was a pretty impressive pace from them in FP1. Not sure many predicted that.
No. And, as you expect early on, lots of different tire strategies being tried out.
Hard, medium, softs. Everyone just getting a feel for the grip on that green track surface.
So if we look a bit closer at the FP1 times, Leclerc's best was a 1 minute 11.964 on the soft tires.
And Verstappen just behind 1.1.127. So what's that? 0.163 seconds. Pretty close.
Norris was 0.163 seconds. Pretty close.
And Sainz in P7, his best was a 1.12.546. Actually, interestingly, he was closer to Leclerc's time in that session than Hamilton was.
Yeah. And Alonso's P10, a 1.13.015. He'd said before the weekend that getting into Q3 wasn't impossible. Not a chimera was the word he used.
Yeah, setting the stage. Maybe P10 don't scream Q3 lock, but it was a starting point.
Right. So after a quick break, everyone was back out for free practice too. And this session, usually gives us a clearer picture of qualifying pace.
Yeah, track rubber's in, teams start pushing a bit harder. And the conditions changed too, it got warmer.
Yeah, air temp up over 23 Celsius, track over 42. Quite toasty.
And FP2 definitely delivered on the excitement. Leclerc was P1 again, so Ferrari looking consistently strong.
But the gap, wow. Oscar Piastri in the McLaren was second. Incredibly close. Then Lewis Hamilton, much improved in P3 for Ferrari.
And Lando Norris P4 in the other McLaren, the times were just tiny.
Leclerc did a 1.11.355. Piastri, just 0.0038 seconds slower. A 1.1.393. That's nothing.
It's mental. Hamilton only 0.105 off Leclerc, a 1.11.460. Norris 0.322 back with a 1.11.677. That front group is seriously tight.
Proper competition right there. But FP2 also had its share of incidents, reminding everyone how treacherous this place is.
Absolutely. Isaac Hadjar in the Racing Bulls. He kissed the wall, then hit it again later.
Yeah. Eventually damaged the car enough, delaminated tire, I think, brought out the first red flag of FP2.
And then, ironically, just after setting that brilliant P2 lap time, Oscar Piastri had his own moment.
Did they devote it again? Exit this time.
Yeah.
Went into the barriers, damaged the front wing, looked like.
Yep. And that caused the second red flag. So, interruptions again.
Okay, let's focus on some key performances from FP2. Ferrari, obviously. Leclerc, back-to-back P1s. It just screams confidence, right?
It really does. Their traditional Monaco strength seems alive and well. And Hamilton's improvement, getting right up there near Leclerc in P3.
Shows he found something on his side of the garage between sessions. Maybe setup, maybe just confidence.
And McLaren.
Yeah.
Piastri's P2, even with the crash, shows the raw pace is definitely there.
But it also highlights that fine line, doesn't it? Push fractionally too hard.
And Monaco bites. But Norris being P4 confirms it wasn't a one-off lap. McLaren are genuinely in the mix.
Now, the real standout for me, maybe, was Fernando Alonso.
P7 in the Aston Martin, yeah. A 1.890. That's only about half a second off Leclerc. Very respectable.
And he was briefly P1 earlier in the session, wasn't he?
Yeah.
On the mediums first, then improved on softs.
He was. Left a lot of people with very good sensations, was the phrase floating around. It looked good.
And this ties into the updates Aston brought, right? Specific high downforce wings for Monaco.
Exactly. Not classed as major performance upgrades, apparently more circuit-specific tuning. They kept the Imola floor. But maybe it's enough here.
And Adrian Newey was spotted in the Aston garage observing. Adds a little intrigue, doesn't it?
It certainly does. But it's such a contrast to Stroll's day, isn't it? After the FP1 crash, he ended FP2 way back in P18, over a second off. His weekend looks, well, difficult already.
And Alonso still had the usual Monaco complaints.
Yeah.
Traffic, drivers cutting the chicane at turn 10.
Yeah, finding a clean lap is half the battle here for everyone.
What about Carlos Sainz? P13 and FP2 looks a bit underwhelming on the timesheet.
Yeah, the word is he just didn't get a clean run on the soft tires when the track was maybe at its best. Bit of traffic, maybe a small mistake.
So the potential might still be there. It felt like Ferrari found more pace overall between sessions, but maybe Sainz just didn't hook it up perfectly in FP2.
Possibly. His best lap, that 1.1151, was on the medium compound, which obviously looks slower once the soft tire runs came in, so maybe not fully representative.
And then there's Red Bull. This was probably the biggest surprise, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. Max Verstappen P7 in both sessions. That's really unusual for him.
He was reporting issues again, wasn't he? Tear-offs mentioned again, but also potential gear problems.
Yeah, gear issues in Monaco. That's a massive problem. Destroys your rhythm, your confidence. You need seamless, precise shifts constantly.
Absolutely critical. And what makes it even more eyebrow-raising is that the Racing Bulls.
Their sister team, yeah. They were ahead in FP2, Liam Lawson P5, Isaac Hadjar P6, ahead of Verstappen in P7.
So what does that mean? Are Red Bull genuinely struggling with the setup for this specific track? Or is Max battling a more fundamental car issue?
That's the big question they need to answer overnight, isn't it? Something seems off.
And all of this plays out against the backdrop of Monaco itself. It really exaggerates everything, doesn't it? Driver skill, the need for a perfect setup.
And zero margin for error. We saw that today with the multiple incidents, the red flags. The walls are always there.
There's also that rule for the race this year, the mandatory 2 pit stops.
Yeah, introduced specifically to try and force some strategic variance, maybe create some action in a race that can sometimes be, let's say, processional after lap 1.
Worth keeping in mind for Sunday. What about the weather forecast? Any rain expected?
Doesn't look like it currently. Reports suggest less than a 20% chance for both qualifying and the race. So, likely dry.
Okay. And track evolution. Always massive here.
Huge. It just gets faster and faster. Hitting your quali lap at the perfect moment when the track is at its peak, that's going to be absolutely critical.
Oh, and quick mention. Reports said Ollie Bierman and Yuki Tsunoda were under investigation for potential yellow flag infringements after the sessions. We'll see what comes of that.
So, you take all that. What's the big picture from Friday? What does it all mean heading into Saturday?
Well, the narrative seems fairly clear. I think Ferrari, particularly Leclerc, look really strong. They've got the initial edge, it seems.
McLaren are right there with them.
Yeah.
Seriously close. They look like a genuine threat for pole, maybe the win.
Then you've got Alonso. But Aston Martin looked surprisingly punchy in his hands today. That Q3 goal seems very realistic, maybe even better.
And then the question mark over Red Bull. Verstappen, unusually far back, reporting issues. They've clearly got some homework to do overnight. Big time.
Which all just ramps up the pressure and importance for Saturday's qualifying, doesn't it?
Absolutely paramount. Grid position here is, well, pretty much everything. Overtaking is just notoriously difficult.
So that wraps up our deep dive into Friday practice at Monaco. Ferrari on top, McLaren nipping at their heels, Alonso looking promising, and Red Bull facing some unexpected challenges.
It sets things up beautifully, doesn't it? Can Leclerc finally convert that home pace into pole? Or will McLaren spoil the party? Could Alonso spring a surprise?
And what can Red Bull find overnight? Lots of questions. It promises to be a fascinating Saturday qualifying session.
Definitely one not to miss.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive today.